All righty. Hi, everybody. My name is Sharon Smoot,
And this is Donell Henderson.
and we are here tonight with episode 4 of Realtor Life with Donell and Sharon. We are so excited to be here tonight, and we have a really important topic that we're going to be discussing, and that topic is Realtor Safety. And
good topic.
Yes. And, if you look at the news, if you don't have your head buried in the sand, you know that at least a couple times a year, there's some story in the news about a realtor or real estate agent being assaulted, killed, whatever. And so
robbed.
It is just so important that we all take precautions to stay as safe as possible. And that is male and female realtors,
Absolutely.
real estate professionals.
Yeah. Sharon, it's something that we kind of take for granted. But I think, and like you mentioned, in this day and age, whether you're a realtor or anyone of any other profession, but realtors especially, because we're meeting a lot of people that we really don't know. We're meeting for the first time. We don't know any kind of history or background. We're going into empty homes and buildings. And it's just something I think that this is a topic that, again, is definitely, you want to know about your contracts and all that, but this just warranted some time just to take a pause and look at safety.
Yes. And, thankfully, in my 15 plus years in the business, I have never had anything horrible happen.
Good.
But I can think of one instance where, I was a little bit concerned. And it was a few years ago, and a client of mine and I were meeting a contractor at a property that he was interested in. And I knew the contractor. So these were people that I was comfortable with, 2 men. And my client and I got to the house first. The contractor gets there. We all go in, look around. The contractor, gives his opinion about what work needs to be done and how much it's going to cost. And one of the things that I do, I'm going to say that I do it 99.999% of the time when I go into a house, is that I lock the door behind me. And on that day, I locked the door behind me. But once the contractor had, done his portion, he left. And one of my mistakes is that I didn't ask him to lock the door behind himself when he was leaving, nor did I go and check to make sure that he had locked the door. Well, my client and I are standing there really just chit-chatting, and the door opens and in walks this man. And so I said, excuse me, are you an agent? And he says, no. And mind you, the other thing that I always do is bring the black part of the lockbox, little key holder, in with me. I don't put it back in the box until I'm done. So I had that in my hand. So I knew that when the contractor left, he hadn't locked the door back, because that's the only way the man could have gotten in.
Sure.
So I said, are you a realtor? And he says, no. He said, I just need to look at this house. And I said, well, my client and I are about to leave. And, well, I just need to look at this house. And so I was like, okay. And he's looking around. And my client was like, I have to get back to work. He said, but I can't leave you here with him.
Absolutely not.
So my client ends up going upstairs and saying, look, we've got to go. You're going to need to leave the house. Well, I need to look at this house. And so I was like, look, I was showing this house to my client. I said, and if you have a realtor, your realtor can show you the house. I said, but neither one of us can stay here with you. So you've got to leave. And he, started cursing and telling me how rude and unprofessional I was. And it's like, I don't owe you any professional courtesy, because You
I
just
don't know
walked
you.
in here. You didn't say hello. You didn't introduce yourself. You didn't ask if it was okay. You just said that you were going to look at the house.
Right.
So he got really belligerent and he did leave the house. So my client and I stepped out on the porch. I locked up, but the guy wouldn't drive off. And so my client was like, look, I don't want to leave you. So I'm going to stay here with you. Don't even go get in your car until he
Mm-hmm.
leaves. He said, I'll just have to be late getting back to work.
Mm-hmm.
He said, but don't even get in your car until he drives off. And I think we were just kind of having like a war of attrition to see who
Mm-hmm.
was going to wait the longest. And
Mm-hmm.
my client and I won. And he finally drove off. And my client said, I'm going to follow you out of the subdivision just to make sure that he's not laying in wait for you. And
Right.
he wasn't. But that's like my personal story.
Okay.
But I have two other stories to share with you. And then you can tell me about your safety issues if you've had
Sure.
it.
Well, let me ask you, as we always do, we like to kind of ask questions. So first of all, that was a very interesting, that turned into somewhat scary scenario that you just presented. But one of the questions I would ask is, what are some of the things that you think you could have done differently, or some tools that you had at your disposal in that
Well,
scenario?
the first thing that I should have done differently
Mm-hmm.
was ask the contractor to lock the door behind himself when he was leaving and gone and checked to make sure that he had.
Okay, that's
I
true.
think that I just need, in that situation, I should have been more proactive to make sure that the door was locked.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Probably the other thing that I should have done instead of even engaging with him, which is called 911.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
As soon as, I mean, you really could have called right up front when he came in unannounced, because, and you're more the legal mind than I am, but I would assume even in that short temporary stanza, he could have been perceived as trespassing.
Yes.
Okay, that's number one. But number two, once you ask him to leave, you're supposed to be there with your client. He's not. I would think that that's definitely a trespassing scenario. But at the end of the day, you know, if you feel threatened, and it sounds like you did, or you were, I would just call 911 and just
Yeah.
let the police deal with him.
Sort it out. Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't know at that point if he has a weapon, if he's got an accomplice. You don't know any of that. You don't even know who he is,
Didn't know
for
him
that
from
matter.
Adam. Didn't
Yeah,
know him from Adam.
yeah.
So, yeah, so those were the things that I should have done. And if I had it to do all over again, hindsight is 2020.
Right.
But if he had murdered me, hindsight wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah. Hindsight looks good now, but Sharon's not here.
Yeah.
But that's why we do what we do, is to share scenarios. And I mean, some people have been in the business quite a while, and then there are other realtors that have just started. And in the heat of the moment, things are happening kind of naturally. And you obviously want to start out, and you want to just be professional and courteous at all times. You want to be accommodating. And you
Right.
know me, I am a very accommodating person.
That you are more accommodating than I am, I think.
In some cases, yes. But you cannot overlook simple safety precautions. Otherwise, you could regret it. And that's why we're doing this, to kind of remind people, don't take your safety for granted, because everyone you
Exactly.
meet is not a good person. Unfortunately, it's just the world that we live in.
Exactly. I say exactly too much.
I do too. But
I'm going to work on that.
so one other thing before we go to your second scenario, Sharon, I noticed, and every realtor has his or her process when they open the lockbox and open the door. From that point, it doesn't seem to be a standard process and procedure. So when you mentioned you bring the little black key holder in with you. And so when I do, I will open the lockbox, take the key out, open the door. A lot of times I will actually leave the lockbox portion outside but I will go in and lock the door.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, my process, my reasoning behind that is I don't want to take it in the house and put it somewhere and forget where I put it. You know, as you're walking through the house, you put it down somewhere. So I know if I leave it at the front door, I know it's going to be at the front door. And I've locked the door behind me. So when I finish, you're going to lock the door and then put the key back in the key holder.
Mm-hmm.
In most cases, that is where I left it, at the front of the door. But I mean, I was just listening to your scenario. I mean, everyone has his or her, you know, pros and cons and ways of doing it. That's just mine. But whatever you do, the key is don't lose the key, but make sure you are aware of your surroundings and you don't find yourself staring down, looking down at the key and someone is coming up on you from the back or from the side or from the bushes.
Right. Yeah. So, I usually just carry the key holder around with me. I put the key in it and carry it around with me.
Mm-hmm.
If I put it down, I'm putting it down either right next to the front door inside the house, or I'll put it on like the kitchen counter or someplace where I know I'm going to circle back and pick it up. But usually it stays in my hand.
Sure.
But story number two, a few years ago, I was representing a buyer and we were actually at the closing table. And the listing agent comes in breathless because she's running late. And the closing hadn't started yet because the closing attorney was running late too. Okay. But she was like, oh my God, you will not even believe what happened. She said, I had a showing before I was heading this way. She said, and I opened the door to the house and my clients and I stepped in and there was somebody in the kitchen cooking. She said, and they were frying something. And she said, when they heard us come in, they ran down into the basement. And she said, I just screamed to my clients, run. She said, but I stayed in the house. She said, I was afraid the house would catch on fire because, they were frying stuff. She said, so I ran into the kitchen to turn the stove off while I was calling 911.
Oh my goodness.
She said that she was just so terrified that she had never experienced, anything like that, where some squatter is actually in the house cooking.
Wow. So that was going to be one of my questions. Was the house vacant?
It was a vacant house.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is scary.
Yeah.
That is scary.
Yeah. And she says she didn't hang out long enough to see if the police found the person in the neighborhood, or whatever, because she needed to get to the closing. Mm-hmm. And then story number 3, and this one is really, really terrifying. And I think this is a cautionary tale for every listing agent who puts the lockbox on the freaking back door. That is one of my pet peeves, Donell.
Yeah.
So this agent told me that, God, I don't even remember how she and I got on the subject. But she told me that she had an incident where she was going to show a house to a client. She said she got there first and just waited in her car. Mm-hmm. And her client gets there and they walk up to the front door and lo and behold, the lockbox is not on the front door. They start around to the back of the house and this man comes from back there with a gun and holds them at gunpoint. Took the agent said that she had left her purse in the car, but she had her car keys in her hand and she had her phone in her hand, to open the lockbox. Right. So he took her car keys and her phone, took her client's purse and, whatever the contents of her purse. Yes.
My goodness.
And, wow. He couldn't drive 2 cars at once. Mm-hmm. And her client had parked in the driveway behind her. And so he took the client's car.
Wow.
Yes, but at gunpoint robbed these women.
Wow.
And
that is amazing.
Yes. And so whenever I get to a house and I realize that the lockbox is on the back door, I am always just super cautious about going back there.
My goodness. Wow.
talking about process for
Mm-hmm.
showing houses. Like, I know you've mentioned you go in, you turn the lights on, blah, blah, blah. I don't ever do that.
Mm-hmm.
I always wait for my client to get there
Right.
so that I can be accompanied by someone
Mm-hmm.
going into the house.
And let me qualify that. If I feel like I'm in a safe neighborhood, and whatever safe means, but it's just my definition. If I feel safe, it's daylight, and it's especially if it's a vacant house, I will do that just to kind of give a little, preliminary.
Mm-hmm.
But there have been times that even as a man, I just do not feel comfortable.
Comfortable.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think that you kind of know when there's safety in numbers. There's always safety in numbers, but sometimes you can just determine, okay, this something just doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And I might just want to wait, even if it's a female that I'm meeting, because if something happens, at least someone can call 911, draw attention, get a neighbor, et cetera, yeah, or et cetera, et cetera. But you definitely got to be careful. And, there's a difference between, opening up a fixer-upper or an investor type property versus, a regular single family residence, single family first time home buyer type home. If the house has been vacant for any number of months or years, and you can look at it and say, okay, this needs a little repair, you may want to wait. And those are the ones that I definitely wait.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings us to another point. How do you feel about personal protection? Do you have anything on your person? And you don't have to get into the details and the makes and models because we don't want to give away all your safety secrets. Or do you just use your phone? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I used to have pepper spray, but with those pepper spray canisters, they do dry up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I never replaced it. Shame on me.
Mm-hmm.
But I really just rely on my gut and being aware of my surroundings and
Mm-hmm.
being just vigilant, I guess is the right
Okay.
word.
Okay.
And interesting that you would ask me that, because I got my Realtor magazine last
Mm-hmm.
week after we decided that this was going to be our topic for today. And there was a recent survey done of Georgia Realtors. And it says that for personal protection, Georgia Realtors carry the following: 35% a firearm, 27% a safety or tracking app on the smartphone, 22% mace, and 3% an alert device. Oh, and I do have an alert device. I have a birdie. And
Okay.
oh, shoot, I should have brought it up here. I left my purse downstairs, but the
Mm-hmm.
birdie is this little thing that you can hook onto your purse or your belt or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pull it apart, it makes this screeching sound. And I think it's, I don't know if it's 10 decibels, 50 decibels, 60 decibels, but it's a really annoying sound.
Okay.
So I do have that. But
Okay.
real interesting statistics, the 35% of realtors are carrying a firearm.
I would be in that initial 35%.
Yeah.
Because
And
I just
Donell,
think
I have thought about it,
mm-hmm.
and I still have not done what I needed to do as far as getting a concealed carry permit. Because
Mm-hmm.
I definitely, yes, we can open carry in Georgia, but I don't want to tempt somebody to try to take the gun away from me because they see it on my hip.
Right.
So I'm not
Right.
comfortable with the open carry.
And Sharon, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a discussion that everyone needs to have. Just because you have a weapon doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be safer. It could actually be just the opposite.
Right.
Meaning, if you're not familiar with carrying a weapon and you drop it, you could injure yourself, you could injure a client, you could damage the property. You're trying to, carry the weapon and carry the phone and all that. So you definitely, I would recommend anyone, come up with, again, a process and a plan. And you have to you can't just go out and buy a weapon and put it under the seat.
Right.
That is not what you want to do. There's a proper way and an improper way to carry a weapon and to be prepared. But make sure if you're going to use it, you know how to carry it properly. And should something happen, how are you going to access it? So again, just some basic questions that, if a person chooses to do that, they need to kind of go through and just kind of walk through that plan and process. And a weapon may not be the best option for everyone.
Right. And
you mentioned
Donell,
mace.
The thing about a firearm is that when you pull it out, you've got to be prepared to pull the trigger.
Absolutely.
You can't pull it out thinking, well, if I just show it, that'll be sufficient to stop somebody from, coming at me.
Right.
And so personally, before I got a firearm to protect myself in my home, I really had to do some soul searching and reconcile my mind to the fact that if somebody comes up in here, I'm shooting them and I'm shooting to kill them.
Right.
And, it's no, I'm not some marksman. I can't aim for the knee or whatever. I'm aiming for center mass. But I had to wrap my mind around the possibility that if I pull that gun out, I'm going to pull the trigger.
Right.
I know that with 100% certainty. I'm not trying to talk to them or anything like that. I'm pulling the trigger if someone comes into my house.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have not gotten to that point when I'm out showing real estate. I just have not reconciled it in my mind that I might have to kill somebody who comes at me.
Yeah. And the ramifications.
Yes.
Thereafter, both.
Yes.
I mean, emotionally, legally, it's not like on TV. This is real life. This is a real life that is in question, either yours or the perpetrators.
Yes.
And hopefully we're never faced or put in that scenario. But I just believe it's better to be prepared if you are. And all you're trying to do is increase your chances of living.
Yes.
And hopefully you don't have to deal with it. But again, let's go back to the first part of this. A firearm may not be the best option for everyone. After you've gone through and thought about and had those tough, decision-making scenarios and processes, if it's right for you, great. But if you don't feel like you want to go that route, you are taking currently an alternative option. You're using the birdie. Okay. And the premise behind that is this will, one, draw enough attention to this house, this door, to me, that hopefully the perpetrator will leave, or it will draw enough attention that a neighbor will hear and they will come over and investigate, so on and so forth. Mace is another alternative, or pepper spray or something like that to slow down or disable the person. But even with that, you got to be careful, because you want to, in the heat of the moment, you want to make sure that it's pointed outward away from you towards the perpetrator and not at yourself. You obviously don't want to disable yourself. So a lot of things, and I'm a big proponent of fire drills and dry runs, role playing. What happens if I'm put in this situation? Am I going to have the safety on? Is it going to be loaded? Is it, like you mentioned with the birdie? I don't know if it's battery operated. Is the battery, up to date, and so on and so forth? Is the pepper spray or mace active, or has it, expired? Just certain things. You just don't want to have a false sense of security. And then when you get into a tough situation, a dangerous situation, you don't have time to say, oh, time out. Wait a minute. I think this thing expired 2 years ago. Can I go to the car and get my real one?
Right.
And again, we're just trying to make people think of things now when there is no pressure, no stress, and just be prepared.
And I will tell you this too, Donell. I took a self-defense class a few years ago,
Good
and
idea.
learned some interesting techniques for if
Sure.
somebody comes up on me and actually has put their hands on me, like gouging the eyes, going for, if it's a male, going for the family jewels,
Yeah, the gonads. Yep,
using the elbow, because the elbow
absolutely.
is one of the hardest bones in the body, and just different techniques. So, that's
Right.
always an option as well.
Sure.
And as far as showing houses, I'm always fascinated when I see these women in their stilettos showing houses. How are you going to run when you are in stilettos?
Well, Sharon,
Yes, you
maybe they're
can take
taking the
them off.
position that they're going to use one of the stilettos as a weapon.
Maybe, maybe. And I guess if push comes to shove, you use whatever you can put your hands on.
True.
But
True.
I am an advocate for having on shoes that will allow you to run.
Yes, of
And,
course.
if you have to kick your shoes off to run, that's okay too. But anyway,
Well,
so
another
let me
thing
ask
too,
you this. No,
I
go
was
ahead.
just going to say another thing, just a tip, and I've got some safety tips and recommendations from the National Association of Realtors that I'll share with you here shortly. But one of the things, whether you are a realtor or not, or just on the street, typically bad guys don't like attention, which is why most of the crimes that are committed are at night, okay, under the cover of darkness. But just a basic rule, and we've shared in our family, and I've told my kids, draw attention, scream,
But
yell,
don't scream help. Scream
don't
fire.
fire. Good point. And why would you not scream help versus fire?
Because sometimes people think that you're just joking around, that you're
Right.
What is it? The sky is falling.
Right.
Chicken
Right.
Little.
Chicken Little. Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you scream fire, people are more likely to respond.
Right. At a minimum, they're going to look.
Yeah.
And then, as you stated, fight with everything in you, because unfortunately, this may be your only opportunity to fight.
Yes.
So.
And one of the things, like in the self-defense course, that they emphasized was do not get in the car.
Right.
Fight until the death, but don't let them transport you
right
to a different location.
Right. Even if they threaten you, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to shoot you. Well, you're just going to have to shoot me right here on the spot and drag me somewhere else, but I'm not getting in that car. So. Well, what were you about to ask?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how do you deal with situations where you have a listing and you get a call from maybe, and you know what, you don't even necessarily have to have a listing. You get a call from someone who wants to see a house now. And, they're just insistent that you stop what you're doing and you show them the house now. And when you get those kinds of calls, are there any red flags that go up for you?
Absolutely. So the first red flag is most people just don't call me out of the blue and say, come show me the house. So that's abnormal. It's not normal. I wish people were doing that on a more regular and consistent basis. But even if they do, if the first thing that I'm going to do, and you and I have had many conversations about it, not just from a safety standpoint, but just from a wasting time and gas and effort standpoint, but it includes safety. The first thing I'm going to address is I would love to show you the property at 123 Main Street. And we can definitely get to that. But before we do that, we have to go through some process and procedure. And I explained to them why. So the first thing I'm going to need you to do is send me something, some kind of a state issued ID or passport or driver's license or something that I can understand and know who you are, because I don't know you from anybody. Okay. I'm going to need a good phone number. I ask them for as much personal information as I can. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to ask them, are you already pre-approved with a lender? If they say no to either one of those questions, I shut it down right there. There's really no need for us to move forward. If you're not pre-approved or at least pre-qualified with a lender, why are we going to go out and look at the house? Okay. But from a safety standpoint, and I explained to them, this is for my protection and yours. This actually is protecting you because you don't know me and I don't know you. So we have to go through some processes and procedures. And then once we've gone and verified and validated these processes and procedures, then we can move to the next step. But as far as just you calling me and saying, I want to see this particular house, even if it's my listing or if it's not, it could be a buyer wanting to go see another house. And of course, there are some other questions that I asked. Are you already working with a realtor? So on and so forth down the line. But the first one, I'm looking to assess from a safety standpoint. I need to know who you are. And I even asked them, how did you get my information? I'm thankful that you did, but I just tell them I just like to track where my resources, what resources and marketing resources are working and which ones are not. How'd you hear about me? How'd you find me? And then as you mentioned, I think a lot of us use this, it's not scientific, your gut.
Absolutely.
If you're asking, and again, that may not be the best measure, but if I'm asking you, if you need something from me, and I just kind of flip the script. If I was in a situation where I needed something from you in this day and age, with everything that's going on, I would want to tell you my name, how I found you, this is why I'm calling, this is what my intent is, and this is my time frame. And then I would wait for you to tell me or ask me, is it anything else that you need from me? If so, again, if I'm forthright and truthful, I'll be glad to give you. Sharon, we can even go back a real case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
When I met you,
you
were my realtor before I was a realtor. I was an investor, and I met you. And how I met you, most people may not know this. I was looking for a property, and I found your information on the HUD, HUD Home Store website. And when I called you, I still remember the conversation, not verbatim, but you asked me, how did you hear about me? What are you looking to do? Are you pre-qualified? Can you send me over your driver's license and your pre-qualification letter and all that? And this is kind of how I have since formed my process from that conversation. And I didn't mind, you may have asked me something else. I didn't mind giving it to you because I know you don't know me and I don't know you.
Right.
But you have something that I need, which at that time was, I need to get into this house, super key access, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And from an honest person standpoint, I'm trying to build rapport with you so that you feel comfortable with me, who you don't know, enough to take me to see this house.
Right.
Now,
right.
If you, to me, and the way I look at things is, I understand identity fraud and all that in this day and age. But guess what? Crooks use those same methods as well, just like a normal person would. They are going to give you enough information until you ask that one question that they just don't want to share with you.
Right.
And if I see any resistance, again, going back to the gut, if I get any kind of resistance when asking those initial questions, my red flag has already been up. To me, the red flag is up, and every question that you get right, I lower the red flag a little bit until I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that was a long answer to your short question, but.
Well, and I'll just add to that, like I typically do not do same day showings. And
okay.
I wasn't always like that. But, some things, I have personal responsibilities, I take care of my mom, whatever. And so my life is such that I've really got to have a schedule.
Sure.
But one of the things that I think is very beneficial about not doing same day showings is that you kind of get that cooling off period.
True.
People will call and, it is like imperative that they see the property right now, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, look, I'm sorry, but I do work on a schedule. I'd be more than happy to set an appointment to show you the property tomorrow or the next day. But in the meantime,
good idea.
Let's have this discussion. And, there have been times when I've gotten resistance, and it's like, you know what? I'm not stopping whatever it is I'm doing, even if I'm just sitting on my couch, watching TV. And, I'm just not going to stop what I'm doing to go and show a complete stranger a house. Now if it's a client, someone that I've already established a relationship with, that's something different.
Right.
But that brings me to another question for you.
Okay.
Do you ever schedule appointments via text message or email with a complete stranger?
Absolutely not. Not ever, ever, ever. And you know how I'll say assertive, not aggressive I am. I mean, I'm hungry. I will drive all over Atlanta to make it work. And in some cases, all over Georgia to make it work.
Will.
Okay. I will probably one of the more aggressive, assertive, accommodating, whatever word you want to use, agents that you will find. But again, going back to the gut. And to me, if you're legit, I understand text messaging. Text messaging is the number one form of communication these days in this quick pace, microwave society that we live in. But if you want me to do something, I got to know who you are and what your intent is.
Exactly.
Okay. So if I don't know you, I'm not going to meet you at some unknown, undisclosed location by myself, even with my firearm and the police force behind me. I'm not going to do that. That's just not good practice. So if someone sends me a text and say, and I've actually gotten some requests just like this, and the first thing I do is ask the person to call me. Okay, I don't call them. I ask them to call me. And the reason one reason that I don't call them initially is because I don't know what number I'm calling. Okay, so it could be a number from another country that they want you to call the number, and then they can reverse engineer and they get one.
I hear you.
It could be a phishing attempt. Okay, so if you can text me, you can call me. And I just ask them, you call me. So at least now I know there's a real phone associated with this person. In essence, I'm doing reverse phishing. So you're going to have to come out from under the rock and call me. Okay, at that point, I'm going to look at the number. I'm going to look at the area code. Now, I understand a lot of people move here from other cities, states, and even countries. So if I see something other than a Georgia number, again, the red flag is already up. That's not necessarily a deal breaker, but I'm cautious at that point. And then I just listen to what they're asking. And I go through my scenario. And like you said, sometimes people try to make it seem like I got to have this right now. And I understand. I would love to help you, but I must go through my process. Now, if my process takes too long for you or you're uncomfortable with my process, I politely tell them there are 10,000 other agents here in the Atlanta area. I don't want to hold you up because I must go through this process. You're more than welcome to try someone else today. And if that works out, good luck. But if you want to work with me.
And I was talking to one of my neighbors today, and one of the things that I said to her is that I am never operating in a mode of desperation. And this didn't have anything to do with Realtor Safety, but I'm never operating in a mode of desperation. Agreed. I am motivated, but I am not desperate. No. And so I think so many times these would-be criminals that think that they're going to do something to a realtor think that we are so desperate, to get a house under contract that all reason is just going to fly out the window.
Right.
And so anyone who is listening, keep your head about you. Yes, it is exciting when you get that call. Somebody wants to see $1 million house.
Yep.
That's going to get anybody's adrenaline flowing. But don't be desperate. Be motivated and cautious. And,
Absolutely.
My advice is to never jump up because somebody has called you, whether it's $1 million house, it's a rental, whatever. Don't stop what you're doing, because that smacks of desperation. And that's a signal to somebody who might mean you harm. Absolutely. That they might have a mark. Yep. You could be their next mark. And then what I'll say about scheduling appointments via text or email with a complete stranger is that one of the reasons that I want to have a conversation is that I want to know who I am potentially meeting. Is it a male or a female? And sometimes, if somebody is really shady, you can talk to a woman, but she's going to show up with a man, or maybe a man will show up by himself, if they're up to no good. But generally speaking, it just prepares me. Like, am I going to be meeting a woman, or am I going to be meeting a man? Did the woman, if I'm talking to a woman, did she mention a boyfriend or a spouse? If I'm talking to a man, did he mention a girlfriend or a spouse, or a boyfriend, or, whatever, my roommate, whoever. But just so that I can be prepared for who I'm supposed to be meeting. And so that's one reason why I don't ever deal. And I have a client that has a few rental properties. And this is particularly true with rentals. There are so many inquiries. And so I have, like you said, Donell, a whole process that I go through when I am screening these renters and deciding who I'm going to show the property to and who I'm just going to let go. But, and when I say
you
screen,
mentioned,
like, I want them to pre-qualify themselves, as far as income, rental history, evictions, past due utilities, things like that. But I also want to know, am I meeting a lady or am I meeting a man?
So you bring up a point there. I want to ask you a question. Suppose you talk with a person and it's a female on the phone, but when you get there, it's a male or a couple, a male and a female. How do you handle that?
You know what? I have never had a situation where I've spoken to a woman and was expecting to meet a woman and then it was a man. I have had a situation where I have spoken to a woman and she has told me, my boyfriend is going to be the one meeting you, or my husband is going to be the one meeting you. I'm just the one setting the appointment. But like I said, I always wait in my car until I see somebody pull up. And if I am told that I'm meeting someone other than the person that I'm speaking to on the phone, I get that person's name and their phone number. And when I see the car pull up, I'll either call or text and say, I'm here. I'm in the white, Nissan Juke, or, whatever car I'm driving.
Sure.
And, give them an opportunity to say, okay, that's me in the whatever car.
Okay.
And, the most vulnerable I am is when I'm opening the lockbox because they're standing behind me.
Right.
But thankfully, knock on wood, I've never had anybody do anything to me, try to do anything to me. And, prayerfully, I will end my real estate career 20 or 30 years from now.
Yeah. Thank
God,
say the same thing. Nothing serious. And I've not, luckily, not had any personal issues. As far as, there have been times when I have been a little uneasy about going into a property, even when I am carrying a firearm, because again, you don't know if the other person has a firearm.
Right.
And the last thing you want to do is be in a basement with your phone doing a virtual showing with someone and you see someone else there, that's bad enough. But if the person has a firearm and now you got to put down the phone and get your firearm and all that, especially a lot of these places are dark with no electricity. So I've had some uneasy feelings and experiences, but thank God everything's been okay. But that's why we do this, to bring awareness and to just kind of make people understand you need to have a process and you need to have walked your way through mentally as many possible scenarios. And even when you're just not even in a house, Sharon, I mean, you could just be on the street going to an event downtown. You just need to be aware of your surroundings.
Absolutely.
And if something looks shady, there's no weakness in crossing the street and just going over here with this crowd as opposed to walking on this side of the street in the dark in the shadows.
Well, and Donell, you mentioned the basement. I will tell you this. When I am showing houses to someone that I don't know, like we've just met, maybe it's the first or second showing, before I've really kind of scoped them out and gotten comfortable, I don't go into the basement.
Good practice.
I'll wait at the top of the steps and let them go on and look in the basement. But I am not going down into any basement with someone that I'm just meeting for the first or second time.
That's a good practice, just in general.
Yeah.
I mean, there are times, sometimes even with people that I know, and I know they were referred to me by another person. Sometimes, if again, it's about your feeling.
Yeah. And I hate an unfinished basement anyway, because I hate spiders and spider webs and snakes and all that stuff.
Right.
So going into an unfinished basement with somebody I know is like an act of courage for me. But when I don't know them, I'm not going
Definitely
into
not gonna
finished, unfinished, whatever.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. Well, Sharon, I know we're getting close to our time limit, and I want to share a couple of tips, safety tips, with you and our audience. And these are just some tips from the National Association of Realtors. And these are top 5 safety action items for realtors. Number 1, and we've talked briefly about most of these. Number 1, plan your safety strategy. And that's kind of what we've been talking about. You don't want to be caught off guard. Okay. And I'll just go in and just give you some examples of some things to help follow best practices and safety, strategies for realtors.
Okay.
Some of these might include meet new clients at the office or in a neutral location like a coffee shop. That's one of the things. I mean, the industry's changed a little bit. We used to kind of do that all the time, but with things changing.
Hey, Misty. Hey, Tiffany. We got a couple people listening, Donell.
Awesome. Share your schedule, and you and I practice this with a colleague, assistant, or family member. Okay.
Yeah, and we really need to do better at that, Donell. Both of us need to do better at that.
Completely agree. Communicate safety concerns with your listing, on your listing, poor cell phone signals, et cetera. So in essence, if you've got a listing that's in an area with bad phone reception, make sure you make other realtors that will be showing the property aware of that.
That's an excellent idea.
Yeah. Here's a big one that we probably don't think about, but we do naturally. Don't overshare personal life things. For instance, I live, in this such and such city on such and such street, and, I live alone. That's too much personal information.
Yeah.
Okay. Do not, and now this one, I don't know how realistic it is. Do not host open houses alone. That's a tough one, Sharon, because sometimes you don't have a choice.
Okay? Yeah. And I'm not a fan of doing open houses anyway.
I'm not either.
I guess, potentially you and I, or one of the other people on our team, we would team up together.
Right. Exactly. Here's one: never go into attics, crawl spaces, or garages where you could be trapped. We kind of talked
Or
about that one.
basements.
Or basements. Exactly. Exactly. Here's another tip. They talk about is, view training videos and things like that. Look at best practices, personal protection and resources. You and I talked about that. And then the last one is take the Realtor Safety Pledge. And I'll just read a little bit. As a realtor, my first priority is the well-being and safety of myself, my realtor colleagues, the clients and customers we serve, and the business partners who foster our profession. I pledge to always conduct business and prospecting activities in a reasonably safe manner, which includes the following recommendations from the National Association of Realtors and adhering to the safe listing form to the best of my ability. I am committed to receive education and in turn advise consumers and colleagues on best safety practices. And I think, and we can post this link as a PDF, it's a little bit longer, but I think by doing this, it's just saying that I am going to make sure that I am aware that safety is to be our priority. We definitely want to be professional, but you have to be safe, not just for yourself, but put your other realtor colleagues and of course your clients and even customers in that position to be safe. So again, sometimes we overlook safety. We kind of get caught up in the routine and the urgency that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But it only takes one time of you not being aware to let your guard down, that you open yourself up for unnecessary vulnerabilities and risk.
Right. And, one of the things, like as far as staying in communication with a colleague, family, or friend, is to have a pre-established like code word if you
Absolutely.
feel that you're in danger.
Absolutely.
And what I suggest is that you have like a code word for I'm a little bit concerned,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't necessarily need to call the police quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then have one where it's like, oh, the stuff is going down.
Don't wait. Make the
Don't
call
wait.
right now.
Call 911 right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so my mom and I have that kind of system. So she knows if I say a particular word that I'm in real danger and that she needs to call the police. And of course, I'm not going to share what my word is, but it can be anything. And you want it to be something innocuous so that when that person is making the phone, and that's the other thing, like I will call my mom periodically throughout the day. If I'm out showing properties and I know I'm going to be gone 4 or 5 hours, I might call her, 2 or 3 times between houses just so that she knows I'm okay. So if I go 2 or 3 hours and she hasn't heard from me, she's calling me to make sure everything is okay.
She
and
knows.
it's then that if I was in danger, I would give her that code word to let her know I'm in trouble.
Right.
So, it could be something, and it should be something that's not going to clue your assailant into the fact that you're telling somebody you're in danger.
Right. Okay. Absolutely. And I just you and I have practiced this for years, just letting someone know, okay, I'm going to be showing a house at 3:00, new client. And if you don't feel comfortable, while you're driving there, have someone on the phone before you get out of your car to open the door and just say, hey, just letting you know, getting a little bit of an uneasy feeling here. Can you stay on the phone with me? Even if I just have the phone on in my pocket or my purse, other person doesn't know it. Can you just kind of listen in? All types of little things that we may take for granted. And again, while these are geared towards realtors, these are things that we could do in our personal lives as well for safety.
Right. And then Donell, I wanted to share that Georgia Realtors can get agent safety alerts. And to do that, let me see, it says text messages are the first resource GAR uses when notifying members of agent alerts. To opt into receiving our text messages, text GARealtors to 866-280-0576. So we can share that in the chat as well. So that's good information to have. I haven't opted in, but when we get done with this, I'm going to go ahead and opt in for that.
Yeah, very good information. And I'm going to just share the link that I was reading from with the safety tips in the chat as well.
Okay. Okay, and I copied that. So I'll add that to the description of this video on Facebook, your link, Donell.
Okay, thank you.
And so let's see if I had any other points from this article that I wanted to touch on before we finish. I highlighted a few things, but I think yeah, I think really what we should close with is basically what we started with. Trust your gut.
Trust your gut.
Trust your gut. You know, so many times people want to ignore that intuition. You might call it intuition, you might call it the universe, whatever.
Yeah.
And people think, oh, you know, I'm just being, you know, too cautious. I'm just being weird. Listen to your gut.
Absolutely.
And this has nothing to do with Realtor Safety, but last year, a storm had come through and a bunch of the traffic lights in my general vicinity were out. And I was heading to Kroger to pick up our groceries and went through the intersection. And it was I guess a flashing red light. And, you know, you treat a flashing red light as a four-way stop.
Right.
Well, on my way back home, just as I was coming up on that same intersection, a little voice in my head, my intuition, the universe, God, however you want to describe it, whatever you're comfortable with, said, Sharon, someone's going to blow through that intersection without stopping. Be careful. And so, because you treat it like a four-way stop, I stopped and I looked both ways. No cars were coming. But because that voice had spoken to me, I waited like 2 more seconds before I accelerated. And what happened? A car blew through that intersection. Didn't even think about stopping.
Wow.
Listening to my intuition saved my life.
Yeah.
Because that car was probably going about 60 and would have broadsided me and I would have been dead.
Yeah.
In my little Nissan Juke. So I say all that to say, trust your gut. Your gut. And it's better to be wrong and safe than ignoring that gut and ending up in a terrible situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just think that we already have built-in mechanisms to kind of clue us when danger is around us. We just need to listen. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good deal. That was a powerful episode, and I hope that everyone listening or that will listen gain some value and benefit from it. Again, we're here just sharing some things from our personal experiences, and we want to just make you aware of all the things, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yep.
As is part of our title, Realtor Life with Donell and Sharon. And as we all know, life is not good all the time, but thank goodness it's not bad all the time, and thank goodness it's not ugly all the time. So it's just
Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. So we are, as we always do, we want to end today's episode with, like we do always, and just invite, if you are a realtor with another agency and you're looking for a change, we're always looking to bring in new and exciting agents into our EXP legacy family. And if you would like to get some more information, we're going to share our contact information in the chat window. And we would invite you to reach out to us. We've got a growing team now of some great realtors that have come on with us, and our team is growing. We invite you to check out EXP and Donell and Sharon. Our team is exciting, and it's not just here in Georgia. We actually have people all over the country. But again, if you're looking for something different, something exciting, please reach out to us and be a part of our team.
We'd love to chat with you. So I'm putting my contact information in the chat.
Same
and
here.
It will be in the description on Facebook in just a minute. And Donell is going to add his contact information to the chat. Oh, I can't see. My eyes are so blurry. But we are, just so excited about what we have going at EXP, what our little team, and we have the best name for our team, right, Donell?
We do.
Team Limitless.
Limitless.
Because the possibilities are limitless.
Absolutely.
The income is limitless. The success is limitless.
Yes, limitless. And our opportunities and our fun and energy are limitless.
Limitless.
We have a lot of fun doing what we're doing. We're not just the old fogey stogies. We try to bring real content and value and have some fun doing it.
Absolutely. So I switched out exactly for absolutely tonight.
Okay.
So next week I'll have another word that I keep saying too many times.
That's okay.
So we come to you every Tuesday at 8:30 Eastern time. So you are free to join us. And I was a little lax this week. I didn't put the topic up in the event on Facebook. Just got too busy. But once Donell and I have a topic for next week, I will be sure to post it in the event on Facebook so that you know what's coming next week. Share us with your realtor friends, with your realtor family. We would love to have people on each week. And, we love feedback. So
yes, we do.
If you love it, give us some hearts, some thumbs up, some wows. If you hate it, give us some angry emojis. All of that is okay. We want your feedback. You are always free to post comments and ask questions. The more you participate, the better it is for us. That Facebook algorithm loves participation, okay?
Yeah.
So
and we love getting it.
I guess that's it for tonight, right?
That's it. That's all I have.
All right. So to all of our fellow realtors and real estate agents, be safe out there and make this week a good, safe, and prosperous one. And we will see you again next Tuesday.
Good night, everybody.
Take care.